Gaza's fragile ceasefire faced its first major test Sunday as Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly strikes, saying Hamas militants had killed 2 soldiers. Meanwhile, an Israeli security official said the transfer of aid into the territory was halted. Joining us now is NBC's Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, good to see you this morning. You know, we knew this was always going to be fragile, but only 1 week in, and this ceasefire seems to be hanging by a thread. Has aid started flowing back into the region?
Good morning. And yes, it was right to always view this with a little bit of a skeptical air. This question of aid is one of the most pressing. There's no question. We've all seen the levels of desperation in Gaza over the past 2 years, really. And now we are hearing that aid trucks were lined up at the border to head into Gaza this morning. We've seen images of that. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that aid would resume today. It did pause over the weekend as part of the Israeli retribution to strikes launched by Hamas terrorists, is how they're phrasing it. It's not entirely clear if Hamas leadership was even involved in these strikes that Israel said killed 2 Israeli soldiers and then caused Israel to respond with a wave of deadly strikes and that pause in aid. So the bottom line is that it's a little bit difficult to understand exactly how many trucks are actually crossing into Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said one of the main border crossings in Rafah would remain closed indefinitely. There hasn't been a date yet on that, but there are other aid crossings where humanitarian supplies that are in such high demand, food, medicine, are going in, and that is all supposed to be resuming today, though humanitarian agencies say it's just still not enough.
Alice, you know the White House has a vested interest in this, given the role they played in the negotiations, and we're hearing from the vice president saying that he might go visit there. Is that right? I mean, what does that hope to accomplish?
Right. So it seemed there'd been some reporting over the weekend that seemed a little bit more declarative, that he was going to go, that it would be as soon as tomorrow, and that he was asked himself about it last night, and he said, we're trying to figure it out, and that he said somebody from the administration is going to be over there in the next few days. It might be me, but we're trying to figure out how to travel there. So my understanding was that he had been sort of deputized to go and be this presence from the administration on the ground that really sent a message to both sides that this thing needs to hang together, and particularly to exert influence on the Netanyahu government to, I think President Trump and members of the administration have said more than once that they wanted to, see this remain under control, and they didn't want to see the Israeli government over-respond to anything. So there were some flare-ups over the weekend, and part of the intent in having J.D. Vance potentially go would be to kind of exert influence over the Israeli government. We also understand that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and then Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, both who were key negotiators, that they're set to head there this week as well. And they have relationships on both sides of the table that they're just trying to hold this thing together.
And Mr. Kushner was kind of zeroing in on governing Gaza when I heard from him. What's the importance of that part of the peace process, Alice?
Yeah, Kushner and Kushner and Witkoff, both did an extended interview on CBS 60 Minutes last night, and they spoke about, a lot of the details of how they managed to pull this thing together, a lot of their personal relationships, business relationships, which just raised some questions, have been central to making this happen. And their point was it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have these ties. But yeah, he's looking to the long term because this very initial part seems to have held together, getting the hostages home, having this initial ceasefire. But for that to hold, there has to be, as he said, an alternative in Gaza to Hamas leadership to make sure that whether it's, an international body to make sure that they can keep the peace there.
Okay, Alice, we know you'll watch it closely. So many are. We thank you for your reporting.